Hello, I am back with another episode, and we're doing something a little different today. So I worked on just a small video game project, something I found on Itch, and I want to just jump into it and just kind of show you what I wrote and kind of where we landed, and just kind of go through the process. So let's jump into the camera, and the game is basically based off Outlast, which is a racing game. It's a little retro. It used to be on like the arcade machines, and of course there was like newer versions that was like I think the early PlayStations. And of course, the first thing I did was went ahead and downloaded the game. I bought it on Switch, and I just played it a couple times, and I just was trying to get an idea of it. So obviously, there's a lot of like paths you can take and stuff like that. But we were really listening to the music and trying to get an idea of what was going on. What's kind of neat is in that game, you initially change the radio. So, I mean, musically, you can do a lot of different options. And I think all the music was just based off different places that you'd play it, whether it's an arcade game or like a console, like the Sega Genesis. So, uh, after I got like an idea of what the game was kind of being modeled after, I went ahead and just came up with a couple ideas that would make me think like racing. And the first one was a little bit more in the camp that I would think of like for like a high intense like racing game. Let's see here. So let's pull up the first idea that I wrote, and I'll just kind of break down the pieces and just kind of like the overview of it, and then we'll go ahead and go into the other thing that was written for it and kind of break down how we put it together, and then I'll show you the finished product, and just we'll kind of go from there. And then at the end of the video, I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we will let me share recording. Yeah, and we'll just kind of go over and talk a little bit about my recent absence. I've been having a real struggle trying to get streaming up and running here. All right, so this is the first idea that I came up with. And as you can already tell from the meter in the beginning, I had a very hard time getting this thing to like a reasonable place. I believe the loop would be like right here. So let's just start off by giving it a listen. Guitar riff builds up a little bit. We just did like a typical band setup. We had drums, bass, guitar. I did have a MIDI guitar layer, a scratch guitar layer that I was using. And, the name of the game would just be survival. You're just trying not to crash, and you're just going as long as possible. So we were just looking for a loop that we could use that could be pretty easy to play. We have like a chord section here. Really what we're doing is just kind of like an A section, a B section, a C section, a D section, a D section, a B section. We're just introducing new ideas and kind of having them come back at a similar point. That way, when we go back to the intro, it just felt like it was just bringing in a section. There's the loop right there. We really just did this by playing around on the guitar, just coming up with this riff. And then I went and MIDI'd it out. So this is all a MIDI guitar. And I'll show that with Contact. And they don't have the great like dead note sound, so I was using an open string for that. Just kind of rolling with the punches. I just did it pretty much all open. Big old power chords, is just like a drop D kind of tuning. I leave the guitar settings really flat. I try not to do anything in the like, effects on the actual onboard guitar unless I really want to, because I usually will bring in guitar rig. And you'll have to forgive me. I switched my monitor setup. And this is just a preset that I like using. It's a metalcore stereo, comes right out of Guitar Rig 6. I think it's a great starting point. They usually use PQ So you always are kind of playing with that when you're narrowing it down. And this is the same thing that's being used on the scratch guitars. Which this one. And then these guys are just pan total opposite while the MIDI's staying in the middle, just trying to create like a big wall effect. This preset comes with a split mix that is panned completely opposite. So you're already getting a pretty wide channel, and so I'm just doing a middle wide channel and then it might be overkill, I might be losing a ton on the side, but the idea was just to make it a big guitar there. I think they're playing everything pretty much in unison, minus this part. I have the dead notes on the real guitar, and the MIDI guitar is doing the notes on top. And then bass, I just pulled out my bass. We just went through it. The way we did this was just again guitar rig, a pretty standard setup for me. Went ahead and just did a GK kind of amp, noise gate up front, compressor up front, and then we did another channel with a little bit of like a trans amp into a 5150 or a Van 51 and guitar rig. Pulled it out into a compressor, just taken off a little bit, and then we had the EQ on there. Nothing too crazy. It really wasn't meant to be that nuts, just something where it's split, so you're supporting. Well, let me pull it up one more time. Process my tuner, don't look at that. So let's go and so 7228. So this is our clean. This is our dirty channel here, and then we just went ahead and blended at 7228. So it has some of the crispiness on top to support the guitars, and we have that low end to blend in with the drums. And for the drums, we're just running. Gosh, I think it's like an 80s kit. Let's pull it up. There we go. Yeah, we did an 80s drummer with a heavy metal preset. A lot of tom stuff going on. Just holding down the groove. And it sounds a little fake in MIDI, but I was kind of going for that just because the game is very like pixelated in the sense that like the sprites are like very pixelated, like the art is very pixelated. It was just like a lot of trees and buildings, and you're just on like this forest kind of road, and you're just driving along. So this was the first idea. This is the first thing we ran with. And then I like to present just some options, especially in something where there's not a lot of direction. I kind of want to send out a lot of feelers and see what's getting the best reception. So we went ahead and made another idea. We can go ahead and save it. I just want to keep that loop. There's just a big ending stinger note, so if you wanted to, you could have the loop end. Just something to have. I wasn't sure if it was necessary. And then it's going to take a second here to go ahead and pull this off and put the new one on. But yeah, this one was much more of like a heavier rock oriented thing. I felt like it might fit better for like maybe like some sort of motorcycle racing game. I can't remember the name of it, but there's another like old school motorcycle game, and you actually can like knock each other off bikes and stuff like that. And I felt like this would probably be a little more appropriate for something at that level. It had a little bit of like a dad rock vibe that I was a little nervous about. I didn't know what the reception on that would be. Apologies, and be loud sound. There you go. So let's go ahead and check out the second idea. So this is one that when I was playing the game, I noticed when you'd lose, which I lost quite a bit. It's a very difficult game apparently. When you'd lose, there would be this track that came on, and it wasn't like super like R.I.P. It was very just like chill, and I really liked the vibe of that, and I felt like it held up pretty well. And so this one was more based off of what was there, and then I threw in some elements that kind of give it a more like retro kind of feel. So let's go ahead and give that one a listen. what this comes down to was this main synth component. And of course this is a ghost kick, so we're side chaining with the kick sample, just making that so it ducks the volume pretty well. We will break down what we're using for it. So, song choir. I usually don't mess with the presets too much, especially in the early one, unless there's something very specific I'm going for. I was just looking for kind of like an airy synth that would really fill it up. I was thinking choir just because I like the idea that it kind of sounded like her voice. Okay, super simple. And then on top of that, we just did some compression. This is the sidechain compression. So we did. I like to do a little pre-comp on the sidechain compression. I just think it gives a little more space in front, which makes it feel bigger. And then a really high ratio, a release. I think I started off with auto release, but I ended up pushing it to 233 just because I felt like that hit a little better. And this is kind of where I think, and we're shooting, between 9 and 12 dB reduction. There's a lot of like on the kick is very tight, so I wanted it to kind of catch the whole thing instead of it being very quick, subtle. I wanted it to be a very noticeable effect, which you could almost hear the attack of that kick, which of course is a couple notes early. And then we just went on top and we just did a regular old compression just to give a little more evenness because that is big chops. Let's see. So we did that. So it still has the peaks, but it's just not as heavy on where the notes are coming out on top. Pretty easy little synth that we just threw together. And then that was paired with the kick. And then let's go drums. So this one, we went ahead and used battery for this. I love using battery for like these kind of sample ideas. We have a 909 kick, a 909 clap, then some closed hats that are kind of doing a little bit of a round robin. Just give some more variety. I feel like this kind of hi-hat thing is very popular in like trap kind of music, and it could really rub people the wrong way. So I was a little bit of like a controversial choice to jump into that. So that's where our drums are with this. And then what I thought was really fun is I did some NES based samples for some of the other instruments, and I'll go ahead and pull up what we were using. And this is a free VST. The company that made Poppy's Playtime was looking for someone who could do like chiptune stuff, and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna do chiptune stuff real quick. Of course, they didn't take me, but yeah, it was a good experience. Just kind of learn some new tools, and in this case, it actually helped because this is kind of like a retro themed thing. So, anyways, we'll just solo these out. So we did a bass, we did like a lead, and we did like a kind of a chord thing. And we can go ahead and play through it. See what kicks in. So that's the bass. Let's see if I can tell which one. So this is the bass right here. Pretty simple. It's like a triangle. So this is going to be the lead, this is a square, and then we did a triangle for the chord part. So that's the lead. And what's tricky is you really can't do chords. So it's actually the same thing as a synth, but it's because I played it, it's all a little offset. So I feel like you can kind of get the blink, 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 blink kind of sound. And I just like the chords of that. So I wanted to keep that in a much more like high attack way, and it doesn't come in until the synth actually drops out. So it's introduced separately. And it's meant to blend with, which is just doing the same chords as the synth is, but it's like the first chord is 4 notes and it's just playing them arpeggiated. But it's done, and then two notes, da dun, da 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 dun. So it's a pretty simple idea, and it comes together and it sounds like this. And this one I really didn't think would be selected, just because I felt like it reminds me a lot of like my very old stuff, like when I first got into like producing. And that was supposed to be the lead. It wasn't very strong lead. So that's kind of where I started. And so the doing this kind of stuff, I was like, this sounds almost like I did originally when I was trying to like, don't make it sound like a goofy '80s video game. Like, what am I doing? And so it's kind of funny to go back into that. But when I sent both options out and I said, hey, here are some ideas I'm playing with, he responded really well to the second idea. So I went ahead and said, all right, well, let's just make it a little longer. Let's go ahead and flesh it out a little bit more. And there was still a lot of processing I could have done, but I wasn't totally sure would have been necessary. Again, it's just like depreciating returns. And I wanted to make sure that everything I'd done so far was in line with what he was looking for. So let's go ahead and open up the 2.1. So this is the second idea. This is the next iteration of it, and this is what he ended up just saying. Like he's like, it's fine. We don't need to touch anything else. It looks like it's ready to go. And so I was able just to render it as a wave, and share the Google file with him. So this is what we ended up settling on. Oh my goodness. Come on, Reaper. I've been trying to split up so I have all the OBS stuff on one computer and the Reaper just on its own, but we will get to that in a minute. So here is 2.1. So as you can see, it's a little longer. We ended up at like a little over minute 48, so probably like 150, somewhere like that. Let's see. Yeah, 152 was the total run time. It does loop, so it's meant to be played over and over. And here's where we were with that. So you can hear a little more definition with the drums. It's a little more present on the bass. There's a little bit of a slide in these certain notes, and you hear the and a lot of this is pretty much the same thing with new layers added. So if we take like the synth, we broke the synth down into like a Rhodes and the synth. So here's the original synth. And then we added this Rhodes element, and we were very tight on the EQ that we let through here. It is really just the low mids that we wanted out of this. When combined, they come up with this. So some of the stuff that's lost on the synth is brought back into Rhodes, and it's in that little pocket that really pushed the low mids, while the synth was high passed a lot harder. So you're getting a lot more like the ambience and like that top end, where the Rhodes are really filling in the fundamental. And we just did a really big reverb on there to space it out a lot. It's kind of funny, the channel for a couple of these were very long, trying to get that synth to really pop, and we ended up reusing that for like some of the NES sounds. So anyway, so that's the synth bus per se, and then we did another layer on the bass. So here's our bass. And we broke this up into two pieces. So we have the NES bass, which the bane of my existence with this NES bass is on the note release, there's a click that was driving me crazy. And so I'm not even sure how you compress the last part of the note, but it was annoying. So that was something I was dealing with. And then we compared it with the sub bass. And the sub bass was just Massive X. I kind of took a preset that I like. I don't remember if I made this one or if this was built in, but it was big bassy tone. That sounds like something I would name, so that's why I'm thinking this might be mine. It might have been based off another preset, and I changed some stuff, and I said leave this like this. It has a nice modulation on the brightness of it, so you're able to really dial that back to where it's needed. And this is kind of the same idea as the other track, where you have a bass that's split between like a distortion section and like a sub section. But this time we're using, instead of like a distortion section, we're using that NES with that kind of like rough overtone of the old style synth. And then the sub bass has that slide on it. So that's where that comes from, to give it a little more of just something interesting going on. And it's all just sub. It's all there just to support. And so that is how the bass was built out. Now the drums could have gotten a lot more processing. I did bring them out into their own tracks. I gave the snare some space, but for the most part, I really didn't mess with the drums too much. They're pretty much as they came off out of battery. We did layer up the kick, and we put a snare, like an 808 snare, behind the clap. And we offset the snare just a little bit, so it was playing just a hair after. Here's those sounds. That's a snare. And this is the kick that we added. So very high end. Just gave us some sub, really, really deep sub, like a 30 hertz kind of sub. This was the clap we're using. And this just gave us something that the clap didn't have. Or the clap didn't have. They were just meant to kind of complement each other. We ended up just keeping the same hi-hat sounds. And that came out like this. So we're adding the bass. So let's say we do the synth, the bass, and the drums. We got something like this. And of course we have the leads on there, which pretty much remain the same. Here's my NES bus. As you can hear, the chords have a little bit more going on. And what we're doing there is an EQ. You see there's not even my normal crazy going in there and surgically removing certain things. And then we did a limiter because we really weren't hitting it as hard as we could be. So we see there's a pretty heavy drop on there just to give it more, headroom. And then we went ahead and did a compressor just to even it out a little bit. You see they're hitting pretty hard. These sounds are pretty wild, so I really wanted to just give it a lot. And then once we went through those, on the bus channel, we did just a ton of saturation. You see we're almost halfway full on the moderate saturation. That's a lot more than I generally would go. And then we just added a little more compression, and we did a big warm character. Adding any brightness on this was just inviting rough sounds into the mix. So we just did something warm. It just takes it off a little high, a little low, and gives you more of a mid presence. And it looks like we boosted the output just to make it, again, just closer to like a regular sound that we work with. And that's how that came out. And then we did some reverb, we did a chorus on there, we used just some stuff to give it some space to make it sound a little crazier. And then on the last part of the bus, we just did a kind of a lighter, slow compression on there, just to kind of give it like a growing sound. And all together, it came out like this. exact same as the intro. That way when you flip it, it doesn't have a big impact on it. I was originally having it flip right there, but it just sounded like it was coming back in a little too hard. But yeah, that's essentially this track that we ended up going with. I'm pretty happy with it. I think it's not too bad. If we were doing something very, very particular, or if we were ever going to go back and do like more levels to the game, I probably would do a little more precise EQing, just some really detailed stuff. But as far as if the client is happy, I'm happy. It really wasn't that crazy of a thing to do. Now let's go ahead and bring it back to the camera here. So yeah, that was the track. That was the project. It took me all of like 2 days. I sent a message on Friday. He gave me the green light on Saturday. I sent over those ideas the end of Saturday, and then I expounded on the second idea on Sunday. And I think by Monday he was good to go. I think on Sunday night I sent over like the wave files for it. So it was over. It was just a very quick project, and I would have loved to capture it on video, but I have been battling the two PC setup, and I've watched a ton of tutorial videos. They're very helpful if you're trying to stream like a console. But so I think with the DAW and all the audio, it just makes it a little more complicated because I have a capture card now. I bought HDMI cables so I can send it across. I have the other computer hooked up to one of the monitors so I could flip it on. I have like the remote PC so I do it from my phone. I'm really giving it my best here. But even though I can see the video for one of the monitors, which I said fine, I'll use that. We'll just go to one monitor setup until I figure it out further, or buy another capture card maybe. I don't even know. I have to get the first one to work before I'm ready to do another one. But I can't get the sound to work right from the DAW into my second PC. And so I'm like, do I have to route it through the computer because I've been doing that, and it doesn't seem like it's coming across. I think it's something to do with, since I use like the Scarlett 2i2 for like an interface and headphones, like for these guys, that's one thing, but it's not picking up. And I think everyone's singing the Reaper Stream plugin that I use on the master. Oh, by the way, I didn't even go over the master. Let me just pop into that. I'll show you guys real quick. Nothing crazy. You've seen it all before. You know exactly what I do from a mastering chain. It is EQ, which pretty simple. I boosted that little low pocket there. I took off some of this. Basically just following a lot of what Ozone had. It's really just a big low, like very, very low mid bump. Then we threw on the X compressor. So let's pop that over here. We did a little bit more this time because I was really trying to accent the EQ. So it follows somewhat with that. Again, just allowing this pocket to really breathe. Just a little gain boost. We took a lot off the EQ because the EQ was coming in very hot, and I just wanted to add a little bit of gain post compression, so you get a little more of the flavor of the compressor. And then we just did Ozone. Ozone was just doing his thing. It always starts off way crazy, and then like this EQ curve was pretty mellow, so I felt like that was a reasonable thing. Again, just spacing, the stereo width, happy to add it. Always happy to add more stereo width. I thought this looked reasonable. And then we just played with the threshold to make sure that the loudness meter was hitting. I shoot for like 11, so I'm just looking for like, okay, the integrated the last bar here to be around 11, and just without anything going too crazy. It's like if going to 0 on this one, and then the rest of the song is quiet, so integrated is low, and then medium. So yeah, pretty standard mastering setup for what you've seen on the channel. But so I'm still working on it. I gave myself the goal of the 10th. I would be like, let's have this streaming like ready to rock and roll on the 10th, and it is the 15th now because we've rolled over past midnight. And I still have not figured it out. Like I said, I can get the video over and I can have the camera running on OBS on the other PC. Cannot figure out how to get the stupid audio over there. So I'm not sure exactly what I need is the issue. Even though I got another capture card I could put on the mixer with like the second screen, but If their audio isn't crossing over properly, then I have a bigger issue, which I don't know how I'm going to fix that. So if you have any suggestions, any recommendations, any helpful videos, please leave a comment. Let me know. I hope you enjoy just kind of seeing the breakdown of how I put these tracks together. A very quick project. It was a fast turnaround. It was just a couple hours. And if you know if there's any questions, if you want to know how I did anything, I'm happy to answer it, of course. But other than that, it's been good hanging out. I've been having a blast. Just writing some music. I'm thinking about just doing a big, like a big folder and just saying like, hey, here's a bunch of video game music. Use it. Like have at it. And just seeing if people even want that. But just doing like some basic ideas. And if there's any ideas you want to throw out there, I'm happy to take it. We are really operating with no major direction besides just writing music. So if there's some music that you want written, let me know. I'm on it. But other than that, I appreciate you guys for watching, checking it out, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.